This is your permission slip to speak your truth, own your story, and laugh through the chaos. Welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast.
This is Radiant Voices Media.
Hey everyone, Jordan here. If you're like me, always pushing for that next level in training, recovery, and overall wellness, then you know the right fuel makes all the difference. That's why I'm excited to share my go-to for clean, powerful nutrition, Tropika. Tropika's range of certified organic supplements is packed with high-quality ingredients designed to fuel your body and elevate your performance. Whether you need a protein boost post-workout, an energy kick to get you through the day, or gut-loving superfoods to keep you feeling your best, Tropika has you covered. I personally love their lean protein because it helps my recovery without the heavy bloating feeling I get from these other proteins that I've had in the past. Plus, everything is free from artificial nasties, so I know exactly what I'm putting in my body. If you're ready to take your health and performance to the next level, check out Tropika today at tropika.com.au. And because I love hooking up all of my listeners, use code JORDSDAY10 for a special discount at checkout. That's JORDZDAY10 at checkout for a special discount. Fuel your body and power your life. Tropika has your back. Thanks, you all. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, we are diving into the real, the raw, and often unspoken side of women's fitness. We're not just talking about workouts and protein shakes. We are going to be talking about body image, about hormones, lifting heavy weights, and the pressure to look a certain way. Today's guest is Charlotte, who has helped transform over 250 lives. She helps women eat more and lose weight to achieve lasting results and sustain them. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Yeah, no, thanks again for coming on. I always appreciate, taking the time, people taking the time to come on. But, before we maybe, Charlotte, get into, you and your background and everything, let's maybe get started right away with a question. And primarily, what do you think in the fitness industry, what's something about either women's fitness or just the fitness industry on its own that you think has changed over the last, 10, 15 years that you had to do then that you don't necessarily have to do now?
I definitely think there's been a big shift over the last 10 years. For me personally, when I got into the gym, it was all about trying to achieve a certain body composition and training to lose weight. So I think over the years, it's definitely shifted in a good, in a positive direction. And now it's more about performance-based, there's things like high rocks and, more performance-based events, like half marathons, running's a huge thing now. Yeah. So I think the shift from exercising and cardio for weight loss to now cardio for performance based. So that's probably the biggest shift that I've seen and noticed for myself personally. Like when I got into the gym, running on the treadmill to get skinny or look a certain way, and now it's like I'm not even running about thinking about calories. It's all about trying to improve my pace and trying to get fitter because I'm working towards a performance based goal. So I think that's definitely the biggest shift that I've seen over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's a common story, right? A lot of people who first get started in fitness or health or whatnot, I was the same when I started in the gym 10 years ago. It was to look a certain way, right? And, whether it's weight loss or muscle gain or something, I think that's the focus, and you get so hyper fixated, and it can create maybe all of these unhealthy kind of attributes or habits sometimes.
Absolutely.
Were there any stories or anything that you kind of had to overcome throughout your experience through that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons why I got into the gym back then was, yeah, to obviously look a certain way. And I remember being in school and in year 12, and you're obviously influenced by the people around you and your friends. And suddenly, like, yeah, my friendship group just stopped eating a lot of
Yeah.
food. And, like, obviously, you kind of adapt to those habits too, and not really understanding why or that sort of thing. But I just remember some unhealthy eating patterns that I definitely picked up. So, yeah, there's been a huge shift from there to now, eating to fuel my body and to fuel my training. So, yeah.
Yeah. How do you like when you have clients, let's
Mm,
say, come to see you and
mm,
that's the focus? Because a lot of the times, like I was saying, a new client, that's the focus, right? It's weight
yeah.
loss,
Yeah.
it's to gain muscle or whatnot.
Absolutely.
So, how do you educate them, or
Mm,
how do you, I guess, reshape their goals at all? Or is that something that
mm.
you just go with when you get somebody in that
Yeah,
mindset?
yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So
Mm,
I think everyone, 100% of clients who come to me because of like body composition. They want to look a certain way, and that's completely understandable because everyone wants to look good and feel good in their own body.
yeah.
One of the ways that I sort of address that is through education. So
Mm,
explaining a lot. I think there's a lot of like myths out there and like not a whole lot of education around like I don't know, everyone thinks that, eating less is going to get them a result, which short term it definitely will, but there's not enough information about long term how to sustain a certain result. I think a lot of yeah, like information's around 6 to 8 week challenges and short term goals, but education around there's a difference between achieving a result and there's a difference between sustaining a result, and so sort of setting goals and yeah, just education around what it is they want to achieve. And yeah, and it's like it's a hard one because I do have clients that have been with me for years now, and loving it, but like still not happy with how they look, or still have cellulite and they're not confident. So it's a lot of like having to explain that like this is normal. So I think there's a lot of expectation around like society or standards like that that make them think that yeah, like this isn't normal. Or so I think education and just like not picking the flaws and focusing on like the positives and self-love, I guess.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing because again, like sometimes it is hard to come out of that negative mindset, and be so hard on ourselves basically. And then like as a trainer, you're also working like a lot of people don't realize you're also working like there's a whole psychology side of it as well, like training somebody about mindset, about self-love and self-hate and everything in that regard. So I always find it an interesting topic, but how do you kind of how do people get motivated focusing on that self-love versus the self-hate, like are there any tips that you have for people out there? Because like again, we can all be quite negative on
Mm,
ourselves, and
we all
you know
have bad days.
exactly right, and it's I think easier said than done,
Mm.
but I think a lot of the times it takes practice really.
Yeah,
So what
yeah.
are some tips to go
Absolutely.
towards that
Yeah.
route?
Yeah. So I like to sort of set goals outside of body composition. Like, it's like perfectly okay to have a goal to lose some weight, but more about like performance goals and okay, like can like if someone wants to get a PB in the gym, like I find that a lot more rewarding to work towards than just focusing on how you look all the time. So it does take yeah a lot to sort of implement, but yeah, I think it's so much more like rewarding. If I go and I get a PB and I'm feeling so much stronger and I'm feeling better in my clothes and I'm happy with how I look, like that's going to be so much more rewarding than, seeing the scale go down or that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think just focusing on other factors outside of how you look because in reality, that takes a long time to shift. And I think the problem is that most people don't have the patience and have very high expectations. So, yeah, it's a challenge.
I mean, do you mind maybe getting started about letting us know a bit about like your fitness journey when it started? Because I think like,
Yeah.
to be in such a mindset that you are now,
Mm,
have the confidence, but also help educate other people. Like, you have a story and you've probably gone through these skills yourself,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I think like again, we all have a story in fitness in the fitness community, and I find generally like coaches and trainers are the ones that have done the work and have gotten to, that's why they want to help others because they know that what they've done has been successful. So maybe get started about like where your journey started, and then kind
Mm.
of, we can work from
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. So I got into the gym after school in year 12. I was always very active in school. I did a lot of team sports. I did them more for just to stay active as opposed to actually be passionate about the sport itself and the social side.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, when school finished, like I obviously needed some sort of, physical activity and I got into the gym. And at the time, it was, yeah, all about getting into the gym to look a certain way. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to be skinny. And that's just bizarre to me because I look back at photos of me back then and I don't think I could have lost any more weight.
Right.
Like there was
Yeah.
just nothing to me.
Mm.
So, yeah, definitely getting into it, not for the right reasons, but learning a lot along the way. And that's sort of where my passion for training, I started to realize that I did have a passion for this exercise. And yeah, what was the next steps? I did a bodybuilding competition. So yeah, this was in 2019.
Mm.
I did ICN, so I competed, and I don't regret doing it at all. It was a great experience and something that I wanted to just tick off the bucket list and that sort of thing. But yeah, obviously you can imagine it's, a lot of intense training to look a certain way and, standing up on stage and feeling a lot of pressure and judgment around your body and how you look. So yeah, I went through, yeah, I guess training to look a certain way and, that wasn't very healthy. Yeah, it was very low calories and obviously, there's lots of things that happen through that as well. And then after that, I studied my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. So I did this online whilst I was studying marketing at uni. So I, yeah, did the courses online, never really planned to work in the industry. Like it was just more for like my passion. I wanted to learn more about the gym. I wanted to improve my own performance. And then, yeah, around COVID, I started online coaching. So I saw a little bit of an opportunity there. I just put myself out there, like, yeah, I literally just on my story, like starting online coaching. Like, I've got this many spots at a discounted rate. Didn't really like think a whole lot of it. So yeah, I think that week I filled like 5 clients and it's turned into a community of 25 to 30 women. So yeah, it's definitely something like, it's so rewarding and like nothing feels better than to create your own sort of community. And yeah, over the years, I guess the shift for me personally was from body composition and how I looked to training and moving my body for performance, for competing in high rocks. And at the moment, I'm working towards my first half marathon. So that's exciting. Yeah, so there's definitely been a huge shift for me personally over the years. And it's something that I'm really passionate about implementing to my clients as well. A lot of like women come to me because they want to look a certain way, and I completely understand that because I've been there, and that's why I started in the gym 10 years ago. So yeah, I definitely understand that. I just think there's needs to be education around doing it in the right way, doing it in a healthy way. I'm also very big on encouraging like women to get into performance based goals too. Like I have a few girls training for high rocks at the moment, so that's cool. Yeah, that's like a little bit about me and my journey over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throughout that journey, because I always
Mm,
find like the bodybuilding world quite interesting. Because like you were
mm,
saying, you train to look a certain way, and
yeah.
I think a lot of people have to do a lot of work mentally as well after.
Mm,
I have a few friends that compete as well, and they're always saying that they have to realize after a show that okay,
mm,
that's not necessarily normal. Like
yeah.
as you're going back to what a
Mm,
normal in quotation marks body is,
yeah.
it's a bit odd to them. So mentally, what did that experience, I guess, do for you?
Yeah. I had a pretty good experience,
Okay. Yeah.
luckily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reversing out of that. I didn't stick to my reverse diet. Whoops. But yeah, I did have a good experience.
Okay.
There were some challenges that did come with it because obviously, you achieve a certain result that you can only sustain for a short period of time. Like you literally are working in prep to look a certain way for one day, and that's obviously not something that anyone can sustain long term. But I do think a lot of people achieve this and think, oh, I can sustain this, or this isn't that bad. Um, so yeah, for me, I did eat more food over time, and I found that I did put on body weight quite quickly. There is a lot of change that happens short term. And I think as well, your body is very prone to holding on to weight when you're that lean and you're that low body fat and that sort of thing. So I think initially there was a big change, but I think it's important to just set some goals after competing because you do feel a little bit lost. Like you're working towards something for so long, and when it's over, you kind of a bit like, well, what's next? And it's easy to fall off track or lose motivation. I do hear of people that have really struggled post comp with their goals mentally, um, and yeah, just sort of losing a purpose. So I think for me, what really helped was I was always passionate about the gym. I was training, and I think that's after competing, the shift sort of moved from how I looked to more performance based. I noticed through eating more food, I had more energy. So the quality of my training sessions were a lot better. And that's something in bodybuilding that people don't really talk about. You're not eating a whole lot of food and your training actually sucks. Like you're not getting PVs. You're doing the program. It felt like a chore at the end. Like you're doing a program just to get it done. And yeah, it just wasn't as rewarding as like actually feeling your body to perform. So
Right. What are some, I guess, misconceptions like when you go? Because you talked a lot about weight loss and stuff like that your experience through that. But I guess when you have women that you're coaching, or just women in general, what are some, because even the weight loss space has changed massively over the last 10 years. But what are some misconceptions that you still find out there you have to educate your clients on when it comes to weight loss and them wanting to lose all of these
yeah,
pounds or whatever?
definitely. So a big one is that you can actually eat more food and lose weight, and that applies for a lot of women, particularly women who have been on really low calories for a long period of time. And when I tell people that, they don't believe me until we actually implement it and they see it. It doesn't apply to everyone. It's obviously very individualized and depending on the individual. But I've coached a lot of women who have come to me on significantly like low calories. And speaking of bodybuilding, some women come to me on like 1,500 calories. Yeah. And just not enough education around that. So a big misconception would be around eating less food means less body fat or less weight because it's not always the case. There's a big difference between achieving a result and sustaining a result. So it's very dependent on, is it a short-term goal? Is it a long-term goal? For me, success with weight loss, which is probably the most common thing that I see that women want to achieve, is being able to eat a lot of like as high calories as possible while still being in a calorie deficit. So that's building up the BMR, speeding up the metabolism. It's not always about eating less and less because we can only eat less for so long. So that's probably the biggest one.
Right.
Mm.
And that's like such a hard concept, like you were saying, for people to grasp, right? Because
Yeah.
you think, but then at the same time, it's interesting because I think like, people like yourself, you've had this training, you've had all of this experience, but I think a lot of people, just don't know any better. So I can understand, right, how it's so hard. But, in my whole thought process, what would be like, yeah, if you don't eat or if you under eat or whatnot, then but I think, like you were saying, like your body adapts to that, your metabolism doesn't work as it should be. And those are just things that, like, you don't learn like in high school or, until you get into that. So when it comes to, I guess, like, on top of that exercise and things like that, where does that fit into play? Because I think another thing that I find is, the under eating and over exercising. And then, just like you were saying with the whole bodybuilding space, if you're not eating enough or properly, you don't have the energy, yada yada. So like how does that work with just people trying to lose weight?
Yeah, definitely. So, similarly to food, your body adapts to everything that you do. If you are training a lot, your body will respond well initially. If your goal is fat loss and you're doing double sessions, over time, your body adapts and you sort of hit a bit of a plateau. It goes hand in hand with nutrition and training. So if you're not fueling your body or you're in a deficit or on really low calories for a long period of time, your body is not very efficient during exercise. So you sort of go into survival mode. Think of a car not having petrol. Think of an empty car. It's not going to perform at optimal. It's going to preserve its energy. So if you fuel your body and eat more food, you're actually going to be more efficient training and your body's not going to be in survival mode. It's actually going to be able to use this energy and burn more calories as a result. So that's sort of how I like to explain it, that, you know, if your food is fuel and if you're not fueling yourself, your body's not going to use the energy. So I think when you kind of explain it like that, people are a little bit more open to, yeah, eating more food and that sort of thing. So,
Absolutely.
mm,
And when it comes to the gym and exercise and weights and everything, what are some misconceptions, sorry, about women's fitness when it comes to gym right
yeah, there's
now?
a few.
Okay.
I think it's getting better
Yeah.
with some people.
Yeah.
So obviously everyone's heard it that lifting weights makes you bulky.
Mm.
And it's, if you think about it, like bulky, right? You can't get, it's so hard to build muscle. It takes months, years. And bulky, you know, sure, it can maybe mean excess body fat. But if you think about it, lifting weights is a form of exercise, just like running or cardio. Lifting weights uses energy, it burns calories. So if you think about getting bulky, you're probably more likely to get bulky if you're not exercising and then lifting weights. So yeah, if you're in a calorie deficit, there's no way you can even, building muscles really challenging. Your weight's probably not going to go up. So I think weights is really a good thing for fat loss and particularly long term. Building up muscle, you have a higher BMR. It's really going to support fat loss long term. What's another common one? There was one in my head. I was just thinking. There's definitely a few. Like there's
Yeah.
so many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weights makes you bulky.
Why do you think
Mm,
women are scared to lift weights still? Because I know, like, yeah,
yeah.
they're scared to be bulky and
Mm,
everything. And I think I
mm,
mentioned this before. Like you were saying,
mm,
like people spend years, men spend years trying to be bulky, and
yeah.
like it's hard for them too. So like it's
Yeah.
gonna be hard. But why do you think also like this misconception is in there? Because
Mm,
again, like we do have more education around it.
yeah.
People might see on TikTok or Instagram
Yeah.
more women lifting weights and everything, but there still
Yeah.
is this misconception around
Yeah,
weight
absolutely.
training. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's getting better, but I think gym anxiety is a big one, especially if you
Mm,
go in and you've never touched a barbell. Like, that's intimidating.
yeah. Yeah.
I remember when
Absolutely.
I saw a barbell for the first time and I was like, whoa, that looks scary.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a reason. Like,
Yeah.
people don't know, they haven't touched it before.
Mm,
So actually doing it for the first time,
yeah.
I think, yeah, if people train together, it's a little bit less kind of scary. But I just think lack of knowledge or maybe not understanding technique
Mm,
and doing it for the first time is probably something that maybe is, yeah,
yeah.
causing them to not in the first place.
And that might be, that's a good point because I didn't think
Mm,
of it that way too. That
mm,
might be because, like, generally speaking, like group fitness, for example, I think like a lot of women and men nowadays do, mainly group fitness or when you're in like a group class, I think like the ratio between men and women, depending on the group class, is,
mm,
a little bit heavier on the women. So, that might be a confidence thing. Like,
yeah.
and that's, I think, in the long term probably a good thing because you're learning proper technique, you have a coach in those areas,
Mm,
or a trainer in those areas helping you with technique and everything. So
yeah, definitely.
do you think like what's your opinions on, let's say, group fitness versus weights in a conventional gym when it
Yeah.
comes to weight loss? Because
Yeah.
I think that's also another thing that I
Mm,
find is people go heavy on the group classes.
yeah.
They do like, I don't know, 5 high intensity classes a week or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And that works
Yeah.
a different system and all of that.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
what's your opinion on the whole group versus,
Yeah.
weights training and
Yeah.
stuff?
I think it's definitely dependent on your goals, and your lifestyle. So I think there's obviously pros to both. Like group fitness, it can be done in 45 minutes. It's social. Maybe it's less intimidating because you're in a group and you've got that extra support. Conventional gym, you can obviously individualize and tailor the programming more accordingly to someone's goals. So, individual gyms can get busy. Maybe it takes a little bit longer. So I definitely think it just depends on your goals.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you think like because this whole concept of working to be like working out to be strong and everything is quite new, right? Like I think a lot of people are migrating that way, which is a good mindset to have. But um is there would you say like is there any negatives or dark side
Mm,
of the whole like strong versus skinny thing? Because
yeah.
even the word skinny is like a bit negative, you know? Like
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
what are I guess some negatives potentially for
Mm,
the whole like strong versus skinny
yeah.
or that kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that saying itself is quite positive.
Mm,
I do think there is a dark negative side to it though.
okay. Yeah.
It still focuses on how you look, which is a big like motivator for people to get into the
Mm,
gym in the first place.
mhm.
But I think that exercise is so much more. Like we exercise for so many more reasons other than how we look. And, strong over skinny still implies that it's about our body composition.
Yeah.
But, exercise is about so much more than that. It's about your mental health. It's
Mm,
about performance. It's
yeah.
about longevity,
Absolutely.
So there's so many more things that, I definitely think it's getting better. Like,
Mm,
it's not about thigh gaps
yeah.
anymore. It's about being strong. There's
Yeah.
so many more girls in the weight side of the gym.
Yeah.
But I do think that the focus should be more around your health and
Mm,
longevity, and it's definitely getting there in terms of performance. So,
mm. Yeah, it is shifting, like you were saying,
mm,
and I think that's a good thing in general. And I think like it's interesting too because social media is quite different these days. Like it's exploded, and people have a lot more access to looking at different routines on online and things like that, and maybe learning in that space. But do you think there's a downside with social media and us seeing, these ideal bodies or whatnot these days and
yeah,
having that access?
yeah,
Because I think like, we've spoken about the mental side of things and
mm,
trying to shape our mindset a little bit differently. But,
mm,
we're then going home and scrolling through and seeing,
yeah,
and like, oh, well, I want to look that way or that way.
yeah.
So how do you think that that works into all of this right now?
Yeah, comparison's a really big one. I
Mhm.
think people are always comparing themselves to other people, and it's obviously not good, for someone's self esteem or
Mhm.
someone's mental health, even.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it is a hard one. I think it's very dependent on the individual and their personal situation. Like I think a lot of people are becoming more confident in their own skin and even more confident with putting on a little bit of weight, which is really nice to see. But at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of women aren't 100% satisfied in how they look. And, maybe that is because of people online, or I think it's also not just the fitness industry. I think it's also outside of the fitness industry. If you look at fashion and you look at models, like there's a lot of, thin, like lean sort of physiques. So I think the standards are, yeah, I think it's everywhere. Like it really is. And there's lots of challenges. But whilst content on social media might not mean to be, to make someone feel a certain way, if it's them working out, it's that sort of thing, but it can still affect someone in that way.
Yeah. No, like
Mm.
that's a very good point because I think like like you were saying, people are doing it to be more healthy and people are doing
Mm.
it and they might not. And then on the flip side of things, people are online, maybe making these posts not intending it to be. But
Mm.
I think it's like it's a very interesting question or hard question to even answer because like
Yeah.
again, like you can't really tell someone, oh, don't post this because it's gonna make somebody feel, but then at the
Yeah.
flip side of things, you can't like yourself. I mean, oh, I'm not gonna go on my phone, right? Because it's just we're gonna do that these days,
Yeah.
how it is. But when it comes to like nutrition
Mm.
and eating and things like that,
Mm.
what are your opinions on for weight loss
Yeah.
on diets and restriction and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Because there's so many diets that have come and gone. There's still
Yeah.
diets that are like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
thing, but
It's a
what
bit of a hot topic.
I know, right? So, like, is there anything that you
Mm.
think is worthwhile, like,
Mm.
trying versus not
Mm.
trying,
Yeah.
or are you just against diets altogether? Like, what's your
Um,
opinion on that
I wouldn't
space?
say I'm against diets.
Okay.
I just think it's a lot more like it's a lot more simple than what it's made out to be. It's very like if at the end of the day, if you want to lose weight, if that's your goal, you eat in a calorie deficit. It doesn't matter if it's keto, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's low
Yeah.
this or high
Absolutely.
that. I think it's it should be a lot more simple than that.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I just think that, high protein, yeah, I just think there's too much out there that makes it overcomplicated for people.
It is a hard like, there's so many things that have come and gone, and
Mm.
when it comes to, like, yeah, keto or something, but I think, like, you hit a key point there, and something that many people have mentioned as well is, a calorie is a calorie at the end of the day, so, like, if you're in a deficit, then that's probably your main goal, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, absolutely. If you wanna lose weight, eat in a
mm,
calorie deficit.
yeah,
If you wanna build muscle, eat in a
yeah,
surplus,
yeah,
or you
absolutely.
can just maintain.
And I think, like, we try and overcomplicate things these days, and, like, I
Mm,
think everybody wants the next, like, "Oh, this is the next big thing," right? But,
yeah,
like, why fix what's broken sometimes, right? Like
yeah,
that's the way
definitely.
things have always done. But
Yeah.
what about motivation when it comes to people who
Mm,
struggle? Because I get this question a lot, like, oh,
mm,
how do you go and how do you train? 5 6 days a week. How do you
yeah,
stay motivated? Like,
yeah,
I think like goals are one thing, and it's sometimes hard for people to create goals, but
mm,
like. How do people stay motivated when it comes to, going to the gym,
mm,
eating, the best
mm,
that they can?
yeah,
Because it is such a different thing sometimes for a lot of
mm,
people, and
mm,
it's easier to just go back to your normal habit, really. So
absolutely.
how do you find people stay
Yeah.
motivated?
Yeah, to be honest, people are not motivated all the time. So that's definitely a challenge in itself. People are motivated when they start, of course. That's why they're sort of start, they're ready. Um, no one's motivated all the time, but the ones who stick to the plan are disciplined, right?
Mm,
So they do things when they don't feel like doing it. And that's
mm,
something that I've had to learn as well. I'm not motivated all the time. I went for a run today. I was putting it off. I
yeah,
was tired. I'm like, but I got it done because I've learned to be disciplined.
yeah.
So I think it's sticking to the plan and following the plan, even when you don't feel like doing it.
Mm. And like I think the hardest thing is maybe like to create those habits
Mm,
sometimes, because
mm,
like that's my answer all the time when people tell me, or people ask me, sorry, like
mm,
how do you wake up at, like, the time that you do, or do
yeah,
your double session or whatever. And yes, I have my goal at the end of the day that I'm training for, but like I've done it for so long, it feels
yeah,
weirder for me to not do it than it does, because it's a habit, really. So
mm.
I think, my opinion, that's probably a hard thing, is creating those habits.
Yeah, and we can't go from 0 to 100. Like we've got to, and I think that also comes down to my approach of small changes over time, like what's realistic for you because like say a beginner in the gym is never going to be able to stick to what I'm doing and that wouldn't be realistic or achievable. So I think it's just about making small improvements over time in your routine. It doesn't have to be going to the gym 5 or 6 times a week for someone who's starting out or it's not realistic for. So small changes, start by going once or twice a week, slowly, add some steps. So yeah, I think just doing it gradually, I think is key.
That's a like a key point, I think, like a good
Mm,
point, because I think like some people too, like it's, oh, I have to go 100, or like it's
mm,
not going to work, right? And then like it's easier to crash if you do it that way, because
yeah.
who wants to wake up at, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning,
Mm,
so like that's a good tip, I
yeah.
think, for a lot of people.
Consistency.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then like, if you can do it 2 days, then maybe add that third, or something
Mm.
like that. Because you've done it, to others. So
Exactly.
um, are there any pressures that you think um, are still out there for women in the fitness world, when it comes to, let's say people that have been training for a while,
Mm,
or maybe want to compete or want to do this and that, like, are
mm,
there any pressures that you think are still out there, um, that women need to overcome?
mm. It's a good question. I think there's definitely pressures. Particularly around women looking a certain way. And I don't know if the pressures come from other people or it's just pressure that we put on ourselves. But we're also caught up on how we look and trying to stay lean and, build our glutes, but no one's willing to do what it takes and actually increase the calories and food to get there. So there's definitely a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Were there any pressures, like, because you've gone through over the last 10 years a lot when it comes to, competing, coaching, and trying different things. Were there any pressures, like, as a coach, that you felt you had to uphold or obtain, to whether it be look a certain way for your clients or this and that.
Mm.
Because I think like that's something that's not discussed a whole lot is,
Yeah.
sometimes clients look for somebody who looks a certain way or
Mm.
this and that. So was there
Yeah.
anything that you had to overcome in that regard?
It's definitely a factor and something that had been played on my mind throughout the years. I think initially it definitely was a big part of everything that I was doing. And I think that's what maybe, I was in a calorie deficit and focus on how I look for a long period of time. It must have just been the last couple years where I sort of changed from body composition to performance based now, where, yeah, I've got like, even myself personally, like, I've never had a better relationship with food. I haven't tracked my calories in years. And I think I feel really good where I am now, but I have felt that pressure in the past. But I also feel that, with more experience in the gym and building more muscle, you can build up your calories higher and you can, achieve a lean physique without having to eat too little, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. What are some tips when it
Mm.
comes to maybe like recipes or snacks or something for
Mm.
people who are on this weight loss journey,
Yeah.
who want to maybe feel fuller or
Yeah.
still, have more of a fun diet to not just, be
Yeah.
boring? What are some
Yeah.
tips that you often recommend to your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to stay fuller for longer, protein is a really good one. So protein in your main meals, a protein shake each day. Fats is also a good one. So I think a lot of people fear fats, but fats keeps you fuller for longer. So I have chocolate every night before bed and everyone's like, "Oh my God, how do you have chocolate every day?" And I'm like, "I don't have the whole block. I have like a serving size." So generally, you don't have to restrict yourself and cut out all the things that you like to achieve your goals. If you, stick to the serving sizes of things, it's a bit more, realistic and that sort of thing. But yeah, recipes probably aren't my forte.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm very basic.
Yeah.
I'm a bit time poor. You
Yeah.
don't want to know what I make. I just put the rice in the rice cooker
Yeah.
and chicken in the oven.
There you go. I think it's
So
what works for you, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's so many like Instagram pages out there full of recipes and reels if people need to find some inspo. But yeah, I just think like don't overcomplicate it. Like I think, and this is probably something we haven't touched on, but with food and calories, there's a big difference between good macros and good calories and clean whole foods, right? You could hit your calories and have macas potentially. Or you could, hit your calories and actually eat foods that, whole foods that make you feel good at the same time. So,
And that's like
mm,
that's a very good point because I think like a lot of people um in the past who have come on and have said the whole like, a calorie is a calorie thing,
mm,
haven't mentioned that because I think
mm,
like, you know, if somebody's eating if somebody's and I'm no dietitian, but like,
mm,
if somebody's eating, let's say like a few carrots versus, the same calories in chips or something like that,
mm,
like, you have that fiber and like the body digests it differently. And,
yeah,
you might not be absorbing all of those calories because of the
mm,
fiber and things like that. So
mm,
I think that's a really good tip out
yeah,
there, like,
yeah.
the whole micronutrients and the quality of your
Absolutely.
food.
Quality. I think it's really important. And I think it just highlights the shift from body composition to performance to health to longevity, right? And I think that, what you eat affects how you feel. Like you're going to feel really good after eating something that, is not processed. And I think as well, when people eat processed foods or maybe something that doesn't agree with them, they're going to temporarily react. They're going to get bloated and then they're going to feel like they've put on weight. So, yeah, I just think eat what makes you feel good. And I think the balance of, hitting your calories and macros if you're tracking and that's your goal, whilst eating whole foods is important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Now, before we get into like performance and everything,
mm,
what about like weighing your food and being that, I guess, hyper focused? Do you think there's a
mm,
place for that when it comes to, weight loss or just in the fitness industry
mm,
or what are your opinions? Because I know I've done it in the past
mm.
for many, many years as well. I
Yeah.
don't anymore, but
Yeah.
like when it comes to being like weighing every single thing,
It
what's
can
your
get
opinions on
obsessive.
that? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think it depends on your goals. I think it's very big if you're doing bodybuilding and you're stepping on stage, you've got to stick to it to the T. I myself don't, or as I mentioned, I don't track, so I don't weigh. There was a period after bodybuilding where I did just because I was in the habit of doing it. But then one day I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, does it really matter? And you do get obsessed seeing the numbers and wanting to hit it. And I just don't think it's the most healthy thing. I think short term, it has its place. I think tracking is a very educational tool. And if you want to lose weight, it's worthwhile learning how to do that. I just think that it shouldn't be there long term. And I do think that you need to learn to move away from it and eat intuitively long term. And I think for me, I was able to do that because I learned what it looks like to, hit my calories or hit my protein. And, I'm a bit of a creature of habit. I eat the same thing mostly. So for me, I just sort of stopped tracking and found that, I was still hitting my goals in terms of how I looked and I felt really good. So yeah, I definitely think that it's something that a lot of people should look at moving away from if you've been doing it for a certain period of time and, you know, yeah.
And I love that point too, like, doing it to maybe learn yourself or temporarily and moving away from it. Because that's essentially what I found when I tracked. Like, I don't anymore track anything. And I think back to when I did track, like, yeah, it was obsessive and it was for a different reason. But
Yeah.
one thing that I got out of it is I think I now know the value of food and what I'm putting in my body.
Yeah, me too.
Like I know, what a carb is, I know what a fat is, I know protein. Like I have that understanding to eat, like you were saying, more intuitively. So I think like that's the one good thing, but it's hard, like then trying for it not to be obsessive, like once you start and stop. And I think like that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, that's the one thing that was into it. But I would like, if thinking back, I'd be like, oh, I'd probably not want to do it because it can be a bit
Me
obsessive.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I don't regret doing it because I learned
Mm,
so much
yeah.
from it,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't go back to doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think ever again.
Yeah, it's like maybe a month, and then
Mm,
if you're like you can stop, then stop. Like,
exactly.
but I'm an obsessive person, so that's probably why. When it comes to like eating for performance now and like where
Mm,
you are now versus
mm,
back then,
yeah.
what does that look like for you?
Mm,
How is your structure essentially in your day to day? Your
mm,
training, your eating. What
mm.
does that all look like now versus like 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. I eat a lot of food and I'm always hungry. Yeah, obviously my own training and having an active job and being on my feet quite a lot. But yeah, say 10 years ago, it's actually quite hard to remember, but I do have memories. Obviously, I was living at home back then. This was, yeah, just after school finished. I just have memories of um, dinner, like I'd have half a schnitzel and like some veg and and I wasn't that hungry either. So yeah, and now it's obviously I'm eating a lot. Like if I don't know if you want to hear what I eat in a day, but
Yeah,
don't know if we have time or
yeah, no, that's totally fine. Up to you.
but yeah, like I eat a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, eggs for breakfast, sourdough, a lot of snacks, so like protein balls, fruit, toast. Lunch is, yeah, as mentioned, boring chicken, rice, something of that sort of nature, with vegetables. Yeah, just I eat a lot and I don't track, but from tracking in the past, it's, upwards of 2,500 to 3,000 on some days. So yeah, I do fuel my body quite well, and I've found that the more you eat, the hungrier you get. And with performance-based goals and running, it obviously uses a lot of energy. So yeah, I'm eating to fuel that, and I'm eating to perform and not to lose weight.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to, I guess, fueling, when it comes to, how you train now, because you're saying that you're training for a half,
Mm,
you've done high rocks and
mm,
you're doing that still and everything. Um, what, what kind of like, what has had to shift, I guess, like,
mm,
when it comes to, because like, I think when people who maybe just go to the conventional gym like Monday through Friday, sorry, they might not do as much high intensity kind of stuff a
mm,
lot of the time. Maybe they
mm.
walk on the treadmill, maybe go for a jog here and there.
Yeah,
But I think it's a very different style of training, versus the high
absolutely.
intensity stuff or
Yeah,
just running in general.
yeah.
So like, have you found that like your calories and everything has had to shift from then versus now, or like what's the difference there?
Yeah, so um I'm definitely eating more food. So my calories have definitely shifted from then to now.
Yeah.
I am obviously back then I was tracking and now I'm not tracking.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's a lot more intuitive eating. It's listening to my body and how I'm feeling. Like I'm not just gonna eat something because it's on my plan or I need to eat this to hit my calories.
Yeah.
I'm eating because I'm hungry and I'm listening to my body's cues.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of training, I am doing less weights now,
Okay. Yeah.
and more running. So yeah, I'm still just figuring out my split. I think
Yeah.
it keeps
Okay.
changing every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to run 3 times a week,
Mhm.
and I'm doing weights probably 2 or 3 times a week, and then I'll do like a hybrid sort of high rock style session.
Yeah.
So yeah, my training's quite intense,
Yeah.
and I make sure that I eat to fuel that.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Are there any habits out there that are, healthy in quotation marks
Yeah.
that you think is more of a disguise? Like, is there anything out there that you hear,
Mm.
a client tell you that, they
Yeah.
think is healthy, but
Yeah.
it's really not really?
Yeah, I think there's so many things. I
Okay.
think protein bars are
Okay.
probably one of the biggest
Yeah.
ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it also depends what we mean by healthy. Do we mean healthy in the fact of good calories and high protein? Or do we mean healthy in terms of ingredients?
Right.
So I think, yeah, protein bars and like, energy drinks and diet cokes,
Mm.
all can be low calorie, but the ingredients that comes with that you're putting in your body is not healthy. So yeah, there's more, but
Right.
they're
Yeah.
probably the main ones
Yeah,
that people
absolutely.
have. Yeah.
And I like that answer, like the word healthy too, because I
Mm,
think we all might have a different definition of healthy.
mm,
Like you were saying, somebody might think, oh, well, if I'm having a Coke no sugar, that's more healthy than, a Coke, right?
yeah.
But I guess it's how you look at the word healthy, which
Yeah.
is what I like. But do you think like that the fitness world glorifies a level of, food and training, and do you think it like shifts people's mindsets through a certain way, or how do you think like,
Mm,
how do you think people can be focused on like the performance side of things and that kind of stuff. Like we alluded to it, or you alluded
mm,
to a lot of it before, but I think too it's quite natural in the fitness space
mm,
to glorify eating a certain way,
yeah.
eating like intuitively all the time and
Mm,
only having a clean diet and this and that. So how do
mm.
you think like people can just, eat intuitively and not focus on, oh, I can't have like no junk food or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the balance is quite important because, like you can't just eat clean like 100% of the time. No
Yeah.
one's going to stick to that. Like, everyone has events and
Yeah.
wants to have some alcohol. Everyone, well, a lot of people, like to enjoy a drink every now and then.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being realistic. And that doesn't mean being perfect. That means being consistent.
Yeah.
So, for me personally, I like to eat pretty clean throughout the week. I enjoy, a meal out with my partner on the
Yeah.
weekend
Yeah.
or, some drinks with friends occasionally. And I don't think people should be cutting that out or need to cut that out. So I think, yeah, consistency over perfection. And yeah, allowing for, special occasions
Yeah.
and, birthdays, and there's always going to be events happening. So, and I think as well, it's not always what you eat in terms of body composition,
Yeah.
let's say. It's consistency. So it's not what you eat, it's like how much you're eating. If you're at an event and there's a cheese platter there, don't sit there for hours,
Yeah.
just, so yeah, I think it's just being mindful of when you are at those sort of events, to yeah, not go overboard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because, like you were saying, we're all going to do it, right? And life
Mm.
can be boring if you don't, go
Yeah.
out for dinner or this and that. So, like, you
Yeah.
have to figure out a way, to do it. And, like
Mm.
myself, like every Saturday, I do maybe takeaway, or like I
Mm.
know I'll go out for lunch or something like that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't, I think, like, the whole concept of only eating clean is such a bad thing that from wherever for whatever reason like we have, and I think like a lot of people think, okay, you can only, eat clean for you to
Mm,
lose weight
mm.
or for you to
How
be
many like
healthy.
challenges have you seen? Like 6 or 8 week challenges. People are
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm cutting out alcohol.
Yeah,
Like I'm not having anything bad. And if you think about it, like to me, that's just crazy. Like
yeah,
it kind of sets a lot of people up for failure and
absolutely.
it's not sustainable. It's just
Mhm.
restrictive. So
Yeah.
that I think is unhealthy in itself and can often lead to a worse outcome. Restriction can lead to binge. So yeah.
Yeah, because I
Mm.
know, like, I've done it, like, I've
Mm.
I've restricted so much, to the point where, like, yeah, then one day you binge or, like,
Mm.
you walk through the grocery aisles and you buy, like, 10 things that you shouldn't in quotation marks or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
it can spiral out of control quite quickly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Now, Charlotte, where can people find you? Where can people work with you?
Yeah.
Maybe plug all of that in if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
absolutely. So my Instagram is charlotteprice97.
Mhm.
My online coaching business is Train with Shah. So if you want to eat more food and lose weight, hit me up.
There you go. Perfect. So that'll be in the show notes, everybody. So you can definitely reach out for all of that. But thank you so much for coming on. I think this was great.
Yeah,
I
thank
think a
you.
lot of people will get everything out of here.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Alrighty, everybody. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank Charlotte once again for coming on. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please hit that 5-star review button at the end of the podcast. It really helps out this show, also all of the other shows out there that you listen to. Thank you all again for listening. I will talk to you in the next episode.